All right, so we've got a pretty intense topic for our deep dive today.
Yeah.
Exorcisms. Seems like it's
It's everywhere.
having a moment.
Yeah, you see it all over.
Yeah, and we've got this stack of articles here, like from Wikipedia to History.com, the National Catholic Register,
Wow.
the New Republic Salon, even the BBC chimed in.
It's a hot topic.
It is. So, we want to kind of get to the bottom of this, like what is driving this resurgence in exorcisms?
Yeah. Is it just hype, or is there something more there? I think that's what we want to figure out.
Yeah. Is it just,
A fad?
a fad, or
Is there something deeper?
is it something deeper? And I think it's got to be more than just a fad, because this is
ancient stuff.
this is like woven into the fabric of
way back humanity.
Yeah, and across cultures too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you look at Wikipedia's exorcism entry,
Yeah.
you've got exorcism in Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, Judaism, even Taoism and Chinese folk religion. Like it's
Wow.
everywhere.
So it's not just like
Not just a Western thing.
a Christian thing.
Right. It's a human thing.
It's like a fundamental part of
yeah.
the human experience or something.
I think so. Like this idea that there are
Right.
forces beyond our control
Yeah.
that we need to somehow manage or control or understand.
Well, and I was reading the History.com article,
Yeah.
Exorcisms, the centuries-long history of expelling evil.
Catchy title.
Right. And they talk about how, like, exorcism has been around, like, forever.
Oh, yeah.
It's, like, woven into the fabric of human history.
Mm-hmm.
So it really does make you wonder, like, is there something...
Is it in our DNA?
Yeah, is it in our DNA to, like,
Mm-hmm.
need to confront these evil forces?
Right, and especially when things are out of control.
When the world feels chaotic, right?
Yeah, when bad things happen that don't make sense, we
Yeah.
want to blame something.
Right, and maybe a demon is a
Yeah.
convenient scapegoat.
It's a very tangible enemy, something you can point to and say, that's the source of the problem.
That's causing all this. And that reminds me of something I read in the New Republic article.
Okay.
The author Frankfurter, he was talking about how belief in demonic possession, it kind of tends to spike
Mm-hmm.
during times of like
Social upheaval.
yeah, like
the witch hunts.
the witch hunts
in Europe.
Yeah, 16th, 17th century.
Yeah, that was a time of incredible anxiety.
Oh yeah, plague and wars and like
Yeah.
crazy stuff, right?
People needed someone to blame.
They needed somebody to
The witches were an easy target,
Right.
especially if you know your neighbor was acting a little strange.
Yeah.
It was easy to say, oh, they must be possessed by a demon.
They're a witch Burnham.
Right.
And so are we seeing that like same pattern play out today?
Yeah,
Because like,
I think so.
yeah.
You look at these articles from Salon and the New Republic and History.com, they all point to this big resurgence.
in the 70s.
In exorcisms, starting in the 1970s.
In the 1970s.
Now, is it a coincidence that that's also when The Exorcist came out?
And The Exorcist.
That blockbuster horror film?
Oh yeah, that was like,
I mean, talk about bringing
That's
demonic possession into the mainstream.
yeah. And I bet that probably had like
Oh, I think it had a huge impact
a big impact on.
on popular culture.
Yeah.
Suddenly, everyone was talking about exorcisms.
Right, but it's also important to remember like the social context of the 1970s, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you had like the Vietnam War,
Mhm.
the Watergate scandal,
The counterculture movement.
a lot of
There was a lot of anxiety.
uncertainty.
Uncertainty in the air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe people are looking for an explanation for all that.
I think so. I think they were looking for something to blame.
Someone to blame.
Someone to blame for all the upheaval.
And maybe a demon fit the bill.
Maybe a demon fit the bill. Exactly.
So is that kind of the same thing that's happening today, do you think?
I think there are some parallels. Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we're living in a time of rapid change.
We are.
Globalization, technology is changing everything. Political polarization.
Yeah.
It creates this feeling of unease.
There's a lot of anxiety, right?
Out of anxiety.
And so maybe people are kind of going back to these more like,
Traditional beliefs.
yeah, like familiar beliefs, even if they seem
outdated or
a little irrational
irrational
to some people.
to some.
Yeah.
And it's not just like a fringe thing either, right?
No.
Because I was reading in the National Catholic Register,
Mm-hmm.
and they were talking about how interest in like demonic possession and exorcism is surging,
Really?
even among like what they called friendly Catholics.
Like mainstream Catholics.
Yeah, so this is not just
So-
the far out folks.
So super
Right.
devout folks.
It's
right?
like everyday people.
It's like everyday Catholics are like,
Yeah.
hey, wait a minute.
Maybe there's something to this.
Maybe there's something to this.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
What's their role in all this?
Well, exorcism has always been a part of Catholic tradition.
Yeah.
It never really went away.
Right.
But the demand for exorcists
It's skyrocketed.
has skyrocketed
In recent years.
in recent years.
Yeah, there was an article in The Atlantic,
Oh, yeah.
and they were talking about how in the U.S. the number of exorcists
Mhm.
has gone from like a handful
Like 15 or so?
to like over 100.
Over 100.
That's a huge jump.
Yeah,
And then there's this whole Pope Francis effect,
right.
right? Everyone's talking about
The alleged
how he like allegedly
Mm.
performed an impromptu exorcism,
exorcism on a young man.
which is
Now, whether that's true or not,
a great story.
it's a great story.
But then you've got like these progressive Catholics who think like
yeah,
exorcism is like an embarrassment.
like a relic of the Dark Ages.
Yeah, like, come on, we're in the 21st century.
Right.
Get with the times.
Yeah. Why are we still doing this?
Right.
It's embarrassing.
So it's like this weird
Yeah.
tension within the church.
Absolutely. And I think it reflects a broader societal debate about the role of faith and tradition in the modern world.
So we've talked about like the history.
Yeah.
We've talked about the influence of pop culture. We've talked about what the Catholic Church thinks.
The Catholic Church's role.
But like, what about the bigger picture here?
Yeah.
Like, why are we so drawn to this whole idea of exorcism in the first place?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right.
Is it fear? Is it fascination?
How is it like
Is it something else entirely?
something deeper?
I think it's a combination of factors.
Yeah.
You know, the BBC article talks about the psychological aspects of this fascination.
Okay.
They point out how, like, in exorcism films, you often have these skeptical characters who
Yeah.
end up being convinced.
Yeah.
It's like, we want to believe
Yeah.
that there's something more out there.
Yeah, like
Something beyond the material world.
like that primal fear of the unknown,
Mm-hmm.
but also like
But also this longing for
this longing.
meaning.
Yeah, like
A sense that there's a greater force at play.
there's more to life than just
Yeah.
this.
Than what we can see and touch.
Right. And and I think the Salon article talks about how the Pentecostal movement,
Mm-hmm.
they were really influential in bringing exorcism back into
Yeah.
like the Protestant mainstream.
The Protestant mainstream.
Right. And they also talk about how we live in this culture
Yeah.
that's obsessed with quick fixes.
Instant gratification.
Yeah.
We want everything now.
Right. And so exorcism.
Especially as it's portrayed in movies,
Right.
it offers this like dramatic solution to
Yeah.
really complex problems.
Right. Demons gone.
How are solved.
Everything's better. Right.
Yeah.
But of course, it's not that simple.
No, of course not.
I mean, Father Lambert, who's quoted in that Salon article, he's like,
He's worried about this trend. He's concerned about people seeing exorcists as like
magicians.
magicians.
Like they could just wave a wand and make everything better.
He's like, this is a serious
It's a serious spiritual matter,
spiritual matter.
not some magical cure-all.
Right.
It takes work.
It takes work and
It takes faith.
yeah, so it seems like we've got this perfect storm brewing, right?
Yeah.
Like anxieties about social change,
Mm.
the influence of movies and pop culture,
Absolutely.
the rise of Pentecostalism,
Yeah.
maybe even a little bit of a
Pope Francis effect.
Pope Francis effect.
Yeah.
But what about like
Yeah.
skeptics?
What about the
What are
skeptics?
they saying about all this?
They're raising some important points,
Uh-huh.
especially about the potential for misdiagnosis
Okay.
and abuse.
Oh.
The Wikipedia article mentions this UK think tank called Theos,
Okay.
and they warn about the risks of exorcism,
Especially for
particularly for people with mental health issues.
right.
So, so are we attributing mental illness
That's a big concern.
to demonic possession?
Yeah. Are we misinterpreting what's
Yeah.
really going on?
How's that seem?
Because that could lead to real harm, people not getting the help they need.
Yeah, and let's not forget about the potential for abuse, too. Right?
Completely.
Like history's full of examples of people in vulnerable positions
Yeah.
being exploited.
By those in power.
Right.
So we have to be careful.
So we got to be really careful about this.
Absolutely.
It's not a simple black and white
It's
issue.
a very nuanced issue.
So where does all this leave us? What are we supposed to make of this whole exorcism trend?
It's a tough question.
Yeah.
I think it's a mistake to just dismiss it as superstition
Right.
or some like throwback to the Dark Ages.
Yeah.
This is a complex phenomenon.
Yeah.
It has deep roots.
It's been around forever.
And I think it's telling us something about our current cultural moment.
It's like a A reflection of where we are as a society.
Yeah, like a cultural barometer,
Yeah.
showing us our anxieties about social change, about the unknown, about our place in the world.
Right, like exorcism is like a
Yeah.
metaphor for all the things that we're
A metaphor for our struggle.
struggling with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether you believe in the literal demons or not,
Right.
you can't deny the power of belief
Yeah.
and the human need for meaning.
So what's the takeaway here for our listener?
I think the takeaway is to ask yourself some tough questions.
Yeah.
Why are we so drawn to the demonic?
Why are we?
What anxieties and desires are fueling this trend?
Yeah. What is it about this?
And what does it say about our search for meaning
Right.
in a world that can feel so chaotic and uncertain?
Those are some
Big questions.
big questions. But
Yeah.
I think this deep dive has been really eye-opening.
Me too.
It's made me think about the whole concept of exorcism in like
It's definitely given me a new perspective.
a whole new light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not as simple as it seems.
It's definitely not simple.
On the surface.
But before we go too deep down that rabbit hole,
Right.
we need to take a quick break.
Okay.
We'll be back in a moment to continue this
All right.
fascinating deep dive into the world of exorcisms.
It's like we're trying to exercise the demons of uncertainty and fear,
Right.
that plague the modern world.
Yeah.
But that also raises questions about
Yeah.
the effectiveness of exorcism,
Right.
even if we're talking about it
Yeah.
metaphorically.
Metaphorically. Yeah. Like,
Does it actually work?
does it actually work? I mean,
Yeah.
from a scientific perspective,
Right.
there's really no
No empirical evidence
to support any of this.
to support the idea of demonic possession
Right.
or the efficacy of exorcism.
Right. And I mean,
We said
psychology and psychiatry have offered all these alternative explanations.
for behaviors that were once attributed to
Yeah, what people used to think were deep.
demonic influence. But
But then again,
if we look at it from a more
Yeah.
cultural or anthropological perspective,
okay.
it gets a little bit more nuanced.
Okay.
The Wikipedia article has a really good section on this,
Oh, yeah.
talking about how exorcism is embedded in this whole system
Okay.
of beliefs and rituals.
So it's like,
Yeah.
even if there's not a literal demon
Right.
being cast out,
The act itself
the act itself
could
have a
powerful effect
psychological effect on the
person.
individual.
Right.
It's about belief, ritual, community.
It's like,
Think about the placebo effect.
oh yeah, the placebo effect.
If you believe something will work,
Right.
it often does.
So if somebody thinks they're possessed
Right.
and they go through this whole,
It's a ritual and
It-
everyone around them believes it
and
too.
we believe it too.
That could actually lead to
That could lead to a sense of
a sense of healing or liberation.
the healing or
Liberation, even if there wasn't a real demon.
exactly. It's not about proving
With.
that demons exist.
Right.
It's about understanding the power of
Belief in ritual.
belief in ritual, yeah,
Yeah.
within a specific
Yeah.
cultural context.
Like, that's blowing my mind.
Yeah.
Like, this is
It's a whole different way
a
of
whole different way of looking at exorcism.
looking at it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
just about the literal act. It's about something much.
It's about the human experience.
Even.
It's about our need to believe
Yeah,
in something beyond ourselves.
right.
But I think it's also important to remember
Yeah.
that there are potential dangers associated with exorcism.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We can't
We can't
just
just neglect
gloss over that.
Yeah.
The Wikipedia article makes a good point about
Yeah.
the risks of exorcism,
Especially
particularly for people who are struggling with mental health issues.
mental health issues.
Yeah, there's this danger of misdiagnosis.
Yeah. Attributing
Yeah.
mental illness to demonic possession.
Attributing mental illness to
And that can lead to some
Yeah.
really serious harm
serious harm.
if people aren't
If people aren't getting the
getting the proper treatment
treatment that they need.
that they need. Yeah?
And then there's the potential for abuse, too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, history's full of examples
Yeah.
of people in vulnerable positions
Yeah.
being exploited by
Yeah. And I feel like this is a
those in power.
particularly
So it's something we have to
sensitive
keep
topic
very sensitive to.
because of that.
Yeah. So
So where does this leave us?
where does this leave us? What are we?
What are we supposed to make of this
Oh,
whole
what are we supposed to make of all this?
exorcism trend?
Yeah, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't think there's an easy answer.
Yeah.
I think it's a mistake to dismiss it as just
Right.
superstition.
Or some kind of throwback to the Dark Ages?
Yeah, like we were saying, this is
a complex phenomenon.
a complex phenomenon.
It has deep roots.
It's been around forever.
And I think it's telling us something about our
current
cultural moment.
Yeah, it's like a
cultural barometer.
Yeah.
Reflecting our anxieties.
Yeah.
Our fears.
our desires.
And like you were saying, that need to find meaning
Yeah.
in this world.
In a world that
feels really chaotic.
feels increasingly chaotic and uncertain.
Yeah. And so
Whether you believe in the literal demons or not,
yeah,
I think you can't deny the power of belief
the power of belief.
and the human need for meaning.
So what's the takeaway here for our listener?
I think the takeaway is to ask yourself some tough questions.
Yeah.
Like, why are we
so
drawn to the demonic?
drawn to this dark side of things?
What anxiety
Yeah.
and desires are fueling this trend?
What is it about exorcisms that's so appealing to people?
And what does it say about our search for meaning? In a world that can feel so chaotic and uncertain.
Those are some heavy questions.
They are heavy questions.
But this deep dive has been really eye-opening.
Me too, I feel like.
Yeah, it's made me think about exorcism in
I've learned a lot.
a whole new light.
Yeah, it's definitely not as simple
It's way more complex than I thought.
as it seems on the surface.
Yeah, so much more complex
Yeah.
than I ever imagined.
There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, there's a lot more to unpack here.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're back. And you know what really struck me while we were talking about all this?
What's that?
It's just how many different types of exorcisms there are out there.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we tend to think of the Catholic.
The Catholic imagery.
I know.
The Exorcist.
Yeah, the Exorcist, spinning head.
Yeah. Hollywood's definitely influenced our view.
Big time.
Right. But exorcism is
it's way more widespread.
way more widespread.
Way more widespread
than most people realize.
than I ever realized.
Yeah. I mean, it really speaks to this fundamental human need to grapple with evil, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like a universal.
A universal impulse.
Yeah.
Whether it's a jinn in Islamic tradition,
Right.
a boot in Hinduism,
Yeah, or even...
malevolent spirits in Taoism.
Yeah.
It's the same basic idea.
What? It's the same basic idea.
Yeah, there's this negative force.
To confront and expel these forces.
Yeah, we got to get rid of it.
Right, and that's what I find so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's not just about the ritual.
Right.
It's about what it
It's about what it represents.
Yeah.
The anxieties, the desires, the search for meaning.
Yeah, it's like a window into the human psyche.
Exactly.
And it really makes you think.
It does.
If belief in demonic possession is this widespread,
Yeah.
and it's been around forever, and it keeps coming back.
Across time and cultures.
Yeah.
Could there be something more to it?
Could there be something more to it than just...
psychological anxieties?
Psychology.
Or social anxieties?
Yeah.
Is there something real there?
I mean, that's a question for our listeners to ponder.
Yeah. That's a big one.
Right.
Right. I don't know if we have the answer to that.
We've talked about the science.
We've talked about
the
skepticism.
The
psychology.
The potential for misdiagnosis.
The dangers of abuse.
Yeah.
But then you've got
all these historical accounts.
All these
personal testimonies.
The people who claim to have witnessed.
Yeah, and even demonic influence.
Some alleged cases.
Demonic
influence
in social movements.
Politics.
Yeah.
Social movements
It's a lot to unpack.
Yeah,
it's a puzzle.
Yeah.
No easy answers.
With no easy answers. And I think that's kind of the
beauty of this whole...
I think this deep dive has...
topic, right?
Yeah, it's not about giving you a definitive answer.
It's about
It's about opening up
a
world of questions.
Yeah, a world of questions and perspectives for our listeners to kind of
go and explore
on their own.
Yeah, do your own research.
Yeah.
Think critically.
Don't
just accept
what you hear
or read
at face value.
Right.
Question your assumptions.
Yeah.
Consider different viewpoints. Keep an open mind.
It's good advice for
life in general.
Not just this deep dive into exorcisms.
Exactly.
But speaking of good advice, we want to leave you with
one final
thought-provoking question
to consider.
Okay.
We've explored the history, the psychology,
the cultural context
of exorcism.
Yeah. But maybe the most important question is, Does the resurgence of exorcisms
Does it?
signal a broader shift in society?
Are we
Are we witnessing a return
going backwards
to the supernatural?
Yeah.
A growing embrace
Are we embracing the mystical
of the mystical
in a world that's supposed to be all about
in a world that's so defined by
science and reason?
reason and science?
Yeah, right.
Or is it just
Yes.
reflection of our deepest fears?
Our deepest fears and desires.
And desires.
Magnified by
Yeah.
all the uncertainty.
The uncertainty
of the modern world.
of a rapidly changing
Yeah.
world. Who knows?
Who knows?
Only time will tell.
No time will tell.
But one thing's for sure.
But one thing's for sure.
This conversation is far from over.
This conversation is far from over. That's it for this deep dive.
Hope you enjoyed it.
We hope you enjoyed exploring the world of exorcisms.
Yeah.
As much as we have.
It's been a fascinating journey. It has been a fascinating journey. And remember,
Keep asking questions.
keep asking questions.
Keep seeking answers.
Keep seeking answers.
And keep diving deep.
Keep diving deep. We'll see you next time.
See you later.
Stay curious.